say. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop the headphones on. But whoa, wait. Just in case anyone's been playing around with these too much, it might deafen you when you put the headphones on. There's no speaker monitoring in here, so all the sound that we hear to check everything is as it should be, and indeed to hear ourselves and to hear telephone callers, should that be relevant, is through these headphones. You should check that the rotary volume switch where it says Pres headphones just above the headphone socket there on the bottom right of the desk is no more than about 12 o'clock, like that. Then I can pop the headphones on. Here's a tip though, sadly no longer with us, Radio 4 newsreader, who was quite young when she died, told me a good idea is never to put headphones on with both ears like this, because that kind of locks you into your own little space, if you like using an iPod. What you really need to do is to have one on so that you can hear yourself, check your own, how you're sounding yourself, and also anything or anybody else. But have one of the ears off. It might feel you look a bit of a prat, but that means that you're kind of still listening to what's happening in the studio, because otherwise there's a danger that you'll only hear sound when the microphone is open, once you put the headphones on, and something terrible might happen in the studio. There might be an awful crash, something like that, which you're oblivious of until you put the microphone on. So that's a good idea. Okay, so one headphone on, one headphone off. I'm now going to set it up to just record some straightforward voice links. Well, the desk here, as you see, has a number of faders, as we call them, and switches and knobs above them. Fortunately, we're not going to use all of these. We're really only going to use 2 or 3 at most. The microphone, which is red on the far left-hand side, and then right at the end of that set of faders is one that says PC, which is obviously to play out anything that is on the computer once we've recorded it. And the only other one we're going to use is the phone. I'm going to come back to that for the next section of this demo. Above that are some other switches which you hardly need to worry about. The ones that say start really are completely irrelevant. Above that are cue buttons, which if you hold down, you can actually hear what's on that particular channel without it going through the desk. And that's particularly useful in a live situation where you want to check that the next item is ready off air before you actually put it to air. But there's a set of switches above that that you do need to be wary of, and these are called gain. And these are additional volume levels, if you like, compared to the fader. So that when you set these in advance, so that when you push the fader up fully, you know that the level on that channel is correct. Well, how do you know whether the level is correct? Well, you have these meters here at the top of the desk that say left or right, and these are what's known as ppm, peak program meters. They're rather different from the sort of meters you probably got on your domestic equipment, which are called volume or VU meters. Radio people prefer ppms because, as the name implies, peak program, they actually kind of don't wiggle around with every minor change in the recording or volume level. They give you an idea of where the peaks are. So they do wiggle around a fair bit, as we'll see, but not so much. And that gets us, allows us to get a more accurate reading. So I'm now going to set up the microphone to see whether it's the right level for my voice. Now you should get as close to the microphone as you can, because these booths aren't acoustically treated in any way. So there is a lot of echo, or as we technically call reverberation. As engineers always say, it's not echo, but we won't go into that. And you need to get the mic fairly close. Now the mic is on a stand, it's fairly robust, don't fling it about too much, and adjust it so that you're comfortable speaking into the microphone, but bearing in mind you're probably going to be looking down at a script. Set the microphone fairly close, about sort of 9 centimeters, perhaps something like that, and then set it slightly off center so that you're not speaking directly in front of the microphone. Because if you do, especially if you've got quite a breathy, powerful voice like me, if I say it myself, your P's and B's will start popping, which is a rather unpleasant sound to hear. Alright, so now I'm going to take a voice level. And I'm going to open up the microphone fader here, and now I can hear myself coming through the headphones, and I can see that the sound level is now registering on these ppms, on the meters we'll say now on for short. Now what we need to do is to get the voice level so that it's around about the 5 mark, if you can see there. If it's way below the 4, that's too little. But if it's going way above the 6, that's too much, and there's a danger it might distort. Generally, it's better to go slightly under than over, because in the editing and production stage afterwards, you can always boost volume levels or record levels, but it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get rid of distortion if you've what's called over-modulated, that is to say you've over-recorded the level. Now, this is a bit of a technique, because what I've got to do is to read a bit of my script and then adjust the level on the gain, as I showed you, with the fader up to make sure it's at the right level. Now, it's absolutely no good at this stage going 1 2 1 2 1 2 blah blah blah, Mary had a little lamb, because that is not actually taking an accurate reading. You've actually got to read a script as you will, in the position that you will, to take an accurate reading, but you've also got to look up at the meters and have your hand on the gain volume control at the top there. So I'm just going to read a little bit of my prompt sheet here. Switch on at wall. Check desk LEDs, etc. are lit. Check program switches are selected on desk. So I just slightly moved it down, and then obviously it's anti-clockwise to the left to reduce and clockwise to the right to increase. And I'm looking to see that it's around about the 5 mark. 5 to 5.5 is just about perfect. So as long as I keep more or less in the same position and speak in more or less that level of voice, that should just about be correct. Right, so I'm now ready to go. So all I should need to do now is press record, and you can see now that there's also a nice waveform coming up on Adobe Audition. The waveform should be nice and fat in the sort of from the center line there, but actually it doesn't seem quite as fat as it should be. In other words, the volume level that I'm registering on the desk here isn't quite reflected because of the volume level that's set on the sound card. So I'm just going to go back to the recording control here, which you remember I left open so I could bring it up, and just adjust that a little bit so that now it's a much fatter sound, so that when it's peaking about 5 on the meter here, it should just be going slightly orange. It goes orange, and then if I increase the volume level too much, it would go into the red. So we should have a nice fat waveform, not going over the top and bottom guidelines, and this one at the bottom, which is going green, and then it starts to go a little bit orangey. If I just boost the level even more, you can actually see that it will go into the orange and then red, which is too much. Okay, so that's too much, but I'll bring it down a little bit, and that seems to be about right. Okay, so I'm happy with that now. I can get rid of that again if I want to, and I'm ready to record. I can either start a new track, I can stop that and start a new track, or indeed I can just carry on recording, because of course it's easy to get rid of any rubbish at the beginning of a track. Right, so I'm happy with all the setups, the cockpit checks, if you like, the pre-flight checks, and I'm ready to record now. So I'm just going to record a little bit of this. If Minidisc Recorder says disc full, you need to scroll through Edit and delete track. There should not be anything of importance recorded on the disc, and you do not need to record on the disc. We only record it as backup for live bulletins. Just keep it in record pause mode. Don't forget that if you make an error when you're reading your script, just go back to the beginning of the sentence where the error is made. If you try and just repeat one word, when you come to edit it, you'll find that all the intonations sound wrong, and it sounds like this. So just go back to the beginning of the sentence. Anyway, let's assume for argument's sake that I'm happy with that recording, and I record my links, shut the microphone and switch off, and I can see the recording is there well enough. But if I just want to check it, of course, then I open the PC fader here and then press play, and you can probably hear that there should not be anything of importance recorded on the disc through the headphones. Okay. Then of course I need to save it, because at the moment it's only, it's not saved at all, it's only on the hard drive of this particular computer. So this even logs up on this computer, it won't be there when I come back. So I need to now save it, and I think most of you know how to save that. You click Save As, and then you save in whatever part of the disk you want it to save in. Okay, if you have some space left on your M drive, then you can save it in there, and you save it either as Windows PCM, or if you want to reduce and compress the sound, the amount of time of space it's going to take up, then go down to MP3 Pro, and then of course give it a title, RR's test we'll call it, and then save it on that. Right, so that's fairly straightforward. Oh yes, just click OK if it says you'll be saving to a compressed or lossy format. We know that. Thank you very much.